I'm speaking to you from the point in your story where you've started believing something shifted in him, when in reality, something shifted in you. And that difference matters more than you think, because you're not dealing with a changed man. At first, it didn't feel this intense. It started small. A warm message here, a distant silence there, a moment of attention that felt meaningful enough to ignore the inconsistency. And you told yourself a story. He's just complicated. He's emotionally closed off. He needs time. But what you didn't notice is that you were slowly adapting to instability, not because it felt good, but because it felt familiar enough to tolerate. And that's how confusion becomes normalized. You don't fall for clarity. You fall for patterns you can't fully predict, because unpredictability keeps your attention engaged longer than consistency ever could. He texts more. He opens up briefly. He shows a softer side. And suddenly, your mind labels it as change. But it's not change. It's variation. And your emotional system confuses variation with growth. So you start investing more. Not because he became more consistent, but because your hope became more active. You begin tracking him, analyzing tone shifts, overthinking response timing, replaying small moments like they contain hidden meaning. And slowly, your emotional center moves away from reality and into interpretation. This is where attachment deepens, not in clarity, but in confusion that feels like potential. This is where you begin to work harder for emotional stability that should already exist. You become more patient than your boundaries allow, more understanding than your emotional needs support, more forgiving than your nervous system can handle. You start adjusting your behavior to stabilize his inconsistency. If he pulls away, you soften yourself. If he comes closer, you overinvest. If he disappears, you convince yourself to stay calm. But internally, nothing is calm. Internally, you are constantly scanning for emotional safety in someone who is not providing it consistently. And here's the part that feels hard to admit. You start becoming more attached, not because things improved, but because you started trying harder to make sense of things that were never stable to begin with. That effort creates emotional dependency, not connection, dependency. At some point, you stop reacting to him like a person and start reacting to him like a system of highs and lows, closeness and distance, hope and withdrawal. When he is warm, you feel relief. When he is distant, you feel anxiety. When he returns, you feel addicted again. And this cycle becomes your emotional baseline. Not love, a loop. And the most dangerous part is this. You stop evaluating him based on who he is, and start evaluating him based on who he was last time he showed up. So every return feels like, maybe this time he's different. Maybe this time he'll stay. Maybe this time it will stabilize. But nothing about the pattern supports that belief. Because the pattern itself is built on inconsistency. And inconsistency does not evolve through attachment. It only repeats itself through tolerance. This is where reality quietly bends. You start saying things like, he's not like this all the time. He has a good heart. We just need timing to align. But what's actually happening is simpler and more uncomfortable. You are holding on to the best moments as evidence against the pattern, and ignoring the pattern itself. That's how emotional distortion forms, not through denial alone, but through selective emotional memory. You don't remember the distance as clearly as you remember the warmth. And that imbalance keeps you invested far longer than logic would allow. This is the part that shifts everything. He didn't become more consistent. He didn't suddenly gain emotional clarity. He didn't transform into a different person. What changed is your tolerance for inconsistency increased. Your emotional threshold expanded. What once felt unacceptable now feels manageable. What once felt confusing now feels normal. What once would have made you walk away now makes you stay and analyze. And that is not love evolving. That is self-abandonment adapting. There comes a point where your nervous system gets tired of interpreting instability as intimacy, and you start pulling back, not in anger, not in strategy, but in exhaustion. You stop chasing clarity from someone who keeps creating confusion. You stop trying to decode emotional inconsistency like it has meaning, and for the first time, you begin to see the pattern without emotional filters. And when that happens, something shifts inside you. You realize you were not building a connection. You were maintaining access. Access to moments, not stability. Access to attention, not consistency. Access to potential, not reality. And that realization doesn't just change how you see him. It changes how you see yourself. Because now you see how much of your emotional energy was spent trying to stabilize something that was never stable. Real love doesn't make you guess. It doesn't make you analyze silence. It doesn't require you to interpret basic communication as hidden meaning. Real love doesn't feel like emotional whiplash. It feels consistent enough for your nervous system to relax. And the moment you understand that difference, your entire attachment system starts to reorganize itself. You stop chasing emotional uncertainty. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. And you stop calling confusion chemistry. Because you finally understand something simple but powerful. You didn't lose someone who changed. You stayed longer with someone who never did. And you changed instead.